This is the Ask Faleskini podcast, where the modern economy is discussed from a skeptic's perspective. Mr. Faleskini helps you distinguish what is sustainable in our economy and what isn't. Not everything that glitters is gold, and not all mud is dirty. The podcaster Mr. Faleskini provides no-nonsense advice. He had it all, lost it all, went bankrupt multiple times, and is now attempting to come back from zero with sustainable growth. There are numerous coaches and preachers on the internet that preach about positive thinking and how life is all roses if you just care to see it that way. Well, Mr. Faleskini is definitely not one of them. We recommend you ask Faleskini to keep it real. He discusses the darker side of the current economic reality, the side that's more important for your personal and business finance. His first intention is to help you keep what you already have. Not to be a complete party pooper, Mr. Faleskini will also hint at the earning opportunities in the economy today. In order to please the almighty algorithm, please like, share, and subscribe. And now it's time to start taking notes. The mic goes to the podcaster, the one and only Mr. Faleskini.
Welcome to the Ask Faleskini podcast with a guest. I'm proud to present Jeanne Sullivan Billeci, the soulmate coach from San Francisco. Jeanne is life coach, dating expert, and law of attraction practitioner. She's also the book's author, Be the Soulmate You Want to Attract. When we met online, she explained that she helps successful singles who are confident in their careers, but not empowered in dating. She helps them step up and be the better soulmate they want to attract. Otherwise, they just attract high-maintenance relationships that hold them back. Judging from my personal experience, dating is one of the most underrated topics and as such often overlooked by business people. Jeanne, please tell us about yourself and how you started your business. What is your story?
Thank you so much for having me on, Peter. I agree with you. This is an underrated topic because it has such an impact on how we perform in our careers. You know, whether we have somebody to support us or if we have nobody. So it really, our preoccupation with that can really impact our lives. I, as you said, am the soulmate coach. I started as in marketing and public relations for most of my career. And then I found in my corporate career, I was coaching people a lot. I was doing team building and coaching and mentoring, and I really loved that. And so I officially became a coach starting with careers a number of years ago. And I found that as I kept talking to people about their careers, it always drifted into relationships. Mm-hmm. And when people heard my story and my struggles and how I succeeded, they got really inspired in a way that they didn't with other topics we might discuss. And so I started to get the notion that this was my purpose. Helping people to find a relationship that supports and elevates them instead of a relationship that feels like a second job.
Great. How did you, what was the one thing that just, how did you understand your calling? How did you went from this corporate world into this coaching world that is a bit less corporate? However, you work also with people or often with the people from corporate world. However, this part is a bit more on a private side. And
exactly.
How did you know that is something that you have to do in your life?
That's a great question. I think what was happening was as I was coaching people for careers, they would often express to me that they were really preoccupied with either being single and not having that partner to support them, or being in a relationship that felt like a second job. It felt like really draining and was kind of holding them back. And so as I shared my journey of having a string of horrible relationships that I chose and I pursued, people got inspired by how I shifted everything and put myself out there in online dating in a new way. And I literally the next day attracted not only my husband, but a bunch of other really quality guys who had the same goals and desires and didn't seem intimidated by my success. And it was such an overnight shift that I knew there was, in my heart, I knew there was some this might sound corny, but it felt like destiny. Like this was something that I needed to share. And as I shared it, I at the time was middle-aged when women start to feel like they're invisible. I felt I was intimidating. A lot of people told me that you're too much or you're intimidating. And I was also 300 pounds. I was quite a large Rubenesque woman. And so I was, a lot of people would say, oh, it's going to be really hard for you. But the fact that because I loved myself, and then I put myself out there in a really bold way, and we can talk about that if you want. I manifested my husband overnight. I mean, it was extraordinary. And other people realized they could do it too.
In your description, I thought that you are a law of attraction practitioner. Did that happen first, or did you understand the law of attraction before you put it yourself out there, or did you only after you were so successful you analyzed how your success came about? What was first?
I love that you asked me that. Nobody has ever asked me that. I studied law of attraction enough while I was dating or, in that process that I realized that the issue was me. And that if I wanted to attract better men for me, I needed to show up in a better way. So I understood it at that level. But the actual success that I had that was so fast and immediate, it put me on a new path of studying law of attraction and getting certified as a law of attraction life coach. So now I understand it even more than I did before. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I'm still curious, and I'm going to ask you more in depth. Okay. Most of us started or found out about law of attraction first in The Secret, or either the movie or the book. Was that your case as well, or you got more profound in the beginning?
I think it was because a friend of mine turned me on to Abraham Hicks. Okay. And I started listening to Abraham Hicks CDs, and I really resonated with it because it is very empowering to understand that, what's happening to you is not an accident. It's not bad luck. It's a result of your vibration, where you're at, what you believe is possible for you, what you're focusing on. If you're focusing on a lack that you have in your life and you keep focusing on that, it's going to keep happening. And if instead you envision what you want to create and put more of your emotions and vibration aligning with that you can actually have the outcome you want. I just found that very inspiring and empowering to have that line of thought.
Okay. You just mentioned a lack and thinking about the lack. Isn't it really, I'll say, contradictory that business people that often do not lack any material thing lack in the dating area of their life? How do you find this? What do you think that is that is the reason for that? Do they compensate the abundance in let's say financial sense with the lack in dating, or is there any other reason for being, let's say, their abundance or abundance is less presented in their dating sphere? What do you think about it?
Another great question I have never been asked. I love that. So what I'm finding is most of my clients are relatively successful or identify as successful or very successful in their careers because they have learned that, being an achiever can raise their self-esteem. They had a certain level of confidence in their abilities in that area. But when it comes to being worthy of love, that is a whole different matter. And I have found that someone who is often puts a little bit of a workaholic maybe and putting all their focus in their work and career, that's great because they then flourish in their career, but they kind of ignore the dating because they're afraid of it. And there are so many reasons they can be afraid of dating or doubtful of dating. It could be lack of self-worth deep down that they have to identify and they're not really aware of. It could be fear of commitment, fear of intimacy, fear of being seen and not accepted for who they are just as a regular person. They overly identify with being an achiever, and that's where their self-esteem comes from. It's not an innate self-esteem. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to you?
My personal experience is when I became good as a salesperson, and that was in my early 20s, I got a hang of dealing with rejection. And as soon as I applied the skills from the sales that I learned in sales, I applied it to dating. And when I didn't care about rejection, I didn't want this girl, but that kind of girl, I became immediately, it was, how to say, it turned everything for me. And I could get a lot of girls, not any girl or specific, but any type of girl. That was my turnaround.
I love it.
My 20s.
That's so important what you just said, because fear of rejection is really tied to, at some level, it may not be that you have a terrible self-esteem. I mean, a lot of the people I deal with, they just have doubts about themselves. They're not 100% leaning into their value and self-worth. What you're saying there is that when you let go of the need for everybody to like you, for everybody to be attracted to you, it is so freeing that you can just be yourself and just worry about the people who are going to be interested in what you're selling, which is you. Mm-hmm. We get so caught up in worrying about if somebody is going to be attracted to us and being validated by us. I mean, not everybody, but a lot of people, they get so caught up in that they're not being genuine or authentic. And so the people that they really want to attract are not seeing them or gelling with them. So if we can let that fear go, it can be incredibly empowering and can really fast track you to what happened with you. It can really fast track your success in meeting the right person.
That's amazing. What I would like to ask you when I coach people about treasury and financial success, I often come to people that basically they don't need coaching, they need therapy. How do you deal with people that need therapy, not coaching? Do you send them to someone else? Do you do the therapy on your own? How do you go about it?
In most cases, if it's apparent usually before we actually coach, I ask them a series of questions that will usually indicate to me whether I think coaching is going to be something that benefits them. If there's a lot of trauma, and I can tell from the way that they're talking about their trauma that it's still very fresh and really informing a lot of their decisions, I will encourage them very gently to consider either seeing a therapist first and then coaching, or doing them concurrently. Because I've had people do both. Because a coach will not focus on your trauma, and we're not qualified to do that. There are really qualified people who can help you deal with trauma and heal from that enough that you can look forward. A coach will help you figure out new strategies and how to change your approach in the present and in the future so that you can reach your goals. And in this case, it would be, dating and relationships that really nurture and support you. Mm-hmm. But you have to say it as a coach. You shouldn't take on someone who really needs deeper work before they can really set goals and really follow through.
Okay. Is it hard for you to when you see someone that needs therapy, is it hard for you to just tell them, look, it would be beneficial for you to go to therapy, or it's just...
It's hard. I consider myself an empath, highly empathic. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I have to really watch myself from overly identifying with somebody's pain. Mm-hmm. And I have to make sure that I don't feel sorry for them, because then I can get hooked in and not be helpful. It's better if I don't get hooked in and I'm more objective. I can serve them better. So the empathy can help with other things, but I just remind myself that I'm being of better service if I tell them what they really need. And that would be, I believe that they would benefit from talking with a counselor for a while.
Okay, great. Moving back to the initial topic, when I presented you, or when we met, you explained that you help business people or career people be the best version of their self in order to attract the soulmate that they want. How do you go? What do you understand under the soulmate? Because on the internet we can find so many definitions of soulmate. I will ask you like this, because my listeners are most business people. What is the most down to earth definition of soulmate you can give us for business people so that they understand the concept?
Yep. Well, first of all, I believe we have multiple soulmates. I don't think there is one, which gets a lot of people stuck. I would say from a practical standpoint, it would be a partner who shares your vision, your goals, and really supports and elevates you, reminds you of who you are, those days where you're feeling bad and you forget who you are. I think a partner who brings the right contrast into your life so that it's just enough from a loving standpoint, it's enough contrast to help you deal with any remaining issues that are getting in your way so that you can really reach your goals and, show up bigger and brighter in the world. I think a soulmate would be somebody who does that for you, but you could call it a partner, if that sounds a little bit more practical.
Okay. So basically, if I understand correctly, you're hinting that there needs to be two different energies, yin and yang, in the relationship in order for relationship to function. If we
Yes.
elaborate this a bit further, would you say that if someone is doing a career, that the partner that supports this partner should also be doing a career, or it's better that they're not so successful in their career and they focus more on the support of the leading partner, let's put it like this?
I would say it really depends on the goals of the people. So, with some couples, if they're a power couple, they both should be supporting and elevating each other financially and career-wise. They should be coming together as relatively equal if that's what their mutual goal is to be a power couple. I've heard that one before. I've had some people say, they want a more traditional, old-fashioned setup where one person is the career person and the financial provider and the other person is the homemaker. And it doesn't have to be male, female. It could be switched up. It just really depends on what does each person in the relationship want. And it's a good question, because a lot of times we're so trained to pursue physical chemistry more than anything else. We don't think about the long term. Well, what happens 18 months after that wears off and it's not as strong as it was? What's left? So you better have similar goals and values and similar vision for the future of what you want your life to look like if it's going to last. So it really depends on the couple.
Okay. So we now touched how the couple should function. Let's go one step back. How we should get involved with the partner that we want. How should we? You said that you were extremely successful on the dating apps. How should we present ourselves on the dating apps? So how should business people present themselves? I'm also dating apps and I'm quite successful, but not necessarily because my description is good, but maybe because they can Google me and then they think a word about me. But
maybe. Well, I think dating apps. So it's funny that you said you like dating apps, because that's the number one thing I hear is I hate dating apps, but I try to shift them to see it the way you do, because if you can reframe that dating apps are a really helpful tool, and it doesn't have to be the only approach you take in dating. It's just that I often recommend it, especially for busy professionals, because it's very common that when they're out about in the world in their private life, they're not really present. They're in their phones or checking their emails. They're not present enough to flirt or strike up a conversation in general. So the apps are great because that's what people are there for. That's their intention. So that's already pre-qualified. These are people interested in some sort of relationship. I think the dating apps are very useful in helping you to sort through the people you might not sort through when you meet them in person because you're very physically attracted.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have, your love languages in there, your deal breakers in there, and you're really authentic about what life with you would be like, it's a great way to scare the wrong people away that you might not scare off in person because they're very attracted to you physically.
Okay, great. I like that point of view. Never thought of it this way. You mentioned that dating app is just a tool how you get in touch with someone. I know a couple of other tools, and I would like you to comment on them. One is the dating agencies. The second one is speed dating, like events. And the third one is recommendation. I get a lot of recommendation from my friends. Okay, this girl is single. Just give her a call. I think you would be great, or something like that. That's usually how it starts. What do you think about these other three methods that I mentioned?
Okay, so the first one was
the method that you would recommend. I would also like to hear it.
Okay, all right. So the first one was dating agencies, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, I'm asked about this a lot about matchmaking or dating agencies. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it's impossible to meet someone that way, but I have never known a client who has been successful in dating that way.
Okay.
And that's because, and that's why I'm saying, like, I'm qualifying it with, I'm sure it's possible and there are success stories out there, but I've never come across them, because what tends to happen with the people who talk to me about it is that the dating pool within the agency isn't very robust. And so they maybe go out on a couple of really nice dates, and then the rest are like scraping the bottom of the barrel. It's not feeling like it's truly a match. It's just this person is the right sexual identity, and that's it, and then they put him in there. So that's what I've heard over and over from clients. Okay. And the second one was, what was the second one?
Speed dating.
Speed dating. Okay. My issue with speed dating is that because you only have a few minutes, very short amount of time, you're probably making your decision about the person primarily on physical chemistry. Okay. And to me, I'm not saying you should not have any physical chemistry with someone, but if you're looking for sexual excitement as your primary gauge of whether this is a potential match, you're probably going to be disappointed, because that's not the right chemistry to pursue for partnership. Mm-hmm. And we can talk more about that later.
What do you think about recommendations?
This is another area where I haven't heard a lot of people have had success, and usually it causes fighting because somebody will say, is this what you think of me, that you think this is what I want? Or the friend will go, you're too picky. That's a really nice guy or girl, or, whatever. But I do think it can work if the person who's doing the recommending really knows you intimately well and knows the other person well. I had a client who recommended somebody from work that she thought she knew well. And then my friend, my client, went out on the date with this person. And it turned out he had gone through a really painful divorce. And, but because of his anger issues, he was in court-ordered anger management. Mm-hmm. And everything. And this person at work thought, oh, he's so gentle and so sweet. He's really kind and thoughtful. But meanwhile, he's in anger management. So, that can be problematic if you don't really know both people very well. You can kind of get into a little bit of trouble.
Okay, I will touch upon another trend in US. A lot of male businessmen have just give up on American brides, and they would like to import bride from other countries. My personal experience, I almost have none of experience with this. I had girlfriend when I was living abroad, in Brazil and in Switzerland and in UK. But my personal experience with my friends is that this always ends up in disaster because the cultural differences are so vast that it's almost impossible to build a long-lasting relationship on that. And as you said, as soon as the chemistry is gone, the problem starts.
Yes, and I think what often happens as well is that you will find that on some of those websites, the women are really after, and men too, are after maybe a visa. They're after something else rather than true love. I'm not saying all, but it's very common, at least in my experience. And that's in addition to what you were talking about, where there's just genuine people trying to meet each other. And then because they're in different countries and don't see each other enough, they're going based on physical chemistry, and not necessarily compatibility. But I think a lot of those sites do have people who have an agenda that's not in your best interests. And I would just urge caution and really look at, why am I not successful in the United States? Is it really because it's American women, or do I not feel confident in myself? Do I not own my value? Because there are so many women who really just want somebody who's comfortable in their own skin. And that's really all they want. And it's funny that we, especially when it comes to people who identify as men and people who identify as women, they're so close in what they want, but they have such narratives in their heads about the opposite sex that it gets in their way. And it's sad to me because I coach both men and women. Mm-hmm. And I have to I really try so hard to be like the translator, to see that they're closer in, more aligned than they think they are.
Okay. If we would touch a bit of internet trends, and I would like to have your comments on them. What do you think about when you go out on date, when you already have a date, or if you are in a restaurant or in a bar and you see someone that attracts you, or that you find attractive? How important is the game in dating?
When you say the game in dating, do you mean like the rules? Like you wait 3 days? Okay. I would advise that is a huge time waster, because those games, unfortunately, when they work for the wrong reasons. And it doesn't get you the type of person who's healthy to come to you. If somebody's insecure, those games will work. And if that's what you want, if you just want to be dominant over somebody and have somebody be insecure, be attracted to you and just want you and all that, no judgment. But if that's what you want, then the games could work. But if you're really a healthy person and you just really want a partner who is relatively healthy and wants the same things that you do, I would really just advise, just be honest and authentic. Don't waste time on games. If you really like somebody, don't wait 3 days to let them know you enjoyed the date. Don't love bomb them and give too much communication. But what happens is, especially if it's a man waiting 3 days and it's a woman, the woman's just like, oh, here we go, playing the games. I hear it over and over. Women spot it right away. Yeah, and they'll think you're a player.
We do too. And we
I think it's true. It's true. I could see that. I could see when a woman is playing games. But women, I think, what have you seen women do to you when you've had that game play to you? Is it more like, I'm not available?
Usually is just ghosting for the first time, and then they would come back after a certain period of time, and it's like reading a book, or if you go on any blog spot on internet, you can understand immediately. So the first 3 days they won't answer, then they will send a small message, and then after 4 days they will. So it's just you understand their game plan immediately.
Yeah, it's hurtful, and it's like, sometimes I coach women, if a man approaches you, and I'm trying not to just talk about straight relationships, it could be for any type of relationship, But when someone approaches you and they're being vulnerable by approaching you, don't be rude, don't play games, don't play hard to get, just be genuine. If you're not interested, just, say so in a nice way, the way that you would want to be treated. I know that sounds like common sense, but so much of the time people treat this like a game, and it's a mean game, and we're all human, and we're all just want to have love and just have some compassion, I guess, would really be my biggest piece of advice.
Mm-hmm. So you don't think that men should man up and be tough, and at least in the beginning, they should just be themselves, if I understand correctly?
Yes. At the end of the day, it wastes less of your time,
Mm-hmm.
And I feel bad for men because they're taught that it's not manly to be vulnerable. And the thing is that your vulnerability is what makes women fall in love with you. And so it's so hard for men to know what to do today. And so I think it's best to just be yourself. And the women who don't appreciate that, let them hit the road, because there are plenty of women who will want what you're offering.
Mm-hmm. Let's continue with identifying the right partners for us. So let's talk about the red flags. I'm sure you're familiar with the red flag theory. And what do you think? You mentioned, I would say, one of the red flags, that someone does not appreciate what you're offering.
Mm-hmm.
What would be the other red flags that business people need to consider in partner when they're looking for, let's say, for a partner to be in a power couple together, or partner that will support them, and not the high maintenance partner that they want to avoid?
Excellent question. The most important thing to look for as a red flag is lack of empathy,
Mm-hmm.
because that ties together some of the more serious personality disorders you might run across in relationships that could really damage your life, like narcissism, sociopathy, psychopathy. So you really want to look for someone who's showing a lack of empathy consistently. Mm-hmm. And I would caution people, especially if you're the more sensitive, compassionate, caring type, and you tend to be a nurturer, sometimes we overlook those red flags and we tell ourselves, oh, maybe they're just having a bad day. But people show you who they are right from the beginning. You need to listen to them. So way that it might show up that they don't have empathy is, like, for example, if you're sharing something vulnerable about you, they immediately interrupt and put the focus back on them, and they almost try to compete with you. Oh, you think that's bad? Listen to my story. Or maybe you're at a restaurant and the server comes and the food is not hot. It's lukewarm. And they get like really angry really quickly. Those kinds of things. Or they just,
with the servers, I always can tell how might they treat a server. It's telltale sign for me immediately if they're not nice, or even I usually leave a big tip, and if they complain that the tip is too big or something like that, I know that they're not.
I agree. It means a lot, and people overlook it, either because they're really attracted to the person, or the person sitting across from them is really good on paper and they're trying to convince themselves that this is a good person. So I wouldn't ignore those things. Other things you want to look out for is, are they consistently late and not respectful of your time? Are they flaky? Do they make plans with you and then forget them? Or, oh, I'm sorry, I thought we said it was another day, and it's just, they're not really quite there and they're not really present with you. Those are definitely red flags. If they talk about their exes in a nasty way, that is a bad sign because the next one's going to be you. And that's the same in the corporate world too. It's like if you interview for a job and you're interviewing with somebody who's going to supervise you and they're bad-mouthing their entire staff. You don't want to work there.
Yeah, agree. Okay, we covered the red flags. So basically, lack of empathy if they are late, if they forget about the date, and if they talk dirty about the exes. That would be the top red flags. That's
I would say so. Yes.
What are the telltale sign of a high value person or partner?
Can I just add one more red flag?
Yes, please.
Love bombing.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes people get upset when I say this. I'm not talking about showing up with flowers. I'm talking about on the first date, you show up with flowers, an expensive gift, and then you're texting somebody the next morning like 20 times. How come you haven't texted me back? It's so much attention, and it's like a love bomb, and it's overwhelming and it feels controlling. Mm-hmm. That's a sign of a narcissist, and you want to run really fast from that.
You mentioned narcissist twice. First, with a lack of empathy, and then with love bombing. So the narcissism is a huge, sign that we have to avoid some.
It's funny that you said that, because it is probably the number one dating podcast topic right now. I think it's probably talked about a little too much, but I think it's worth just saying one time that trying so hard to impress somebody, when it starts to feel overwhelming to the other person, it can be a red flag. Okay.
So let's talk about the telltale signs of a high value partner. So the other ones, the ones that we want to see, and we need to identify, and then that we would understand that it makes sense to continue or put more effort into the relationship.
Well, I think empathy would be a good one. This is a person who can demonstrate that he or she has empathy for, if you're sharing a vulnerable story, they can really, they ask insightful questions. They, seem to, empathize. They don't try to compete with you. Another really good green flag would be somebody who knows what your deal breakers are and your values and your vision. And that's what they kind of align with that. Mm-hmm. People forget about compatibility. They really do. And they don't give it enough value. That's really important that you guys have that vision. It's going to carry you through some very rough times, because in any relationship, no matter how great.
Is it important that they're compatible, or that they can adapt, that they're adaptable? What is more important?
That's a good question, because John Gottman, who's the world's leading expert on marriage in terms of research, he said 67% of problems in even the happiest of marriages are unsolvable, but they can be managed. So compatibility means to me that you have enough things in common, and that the things that you don't have in common are not deal breakers, because you don't want to be with somebody who violates one of your deal breakers and you keep hoping they're going to change. I had a client who was, back in the days when we actually did newspaper ads for dating in the ancient times, she had dated somebody. She went on the first date. On the first date, she said she didn't want kids because she was 10 years older than he was. He said he did want kids, but they were very attracted to each other and they dated anyway. 7 years later, he left her because he kept hoping she was going to change her mind, and she didn't. And she kept thinking the same, and he went and married somebody else, and she was heartbroken. But from day one, the seeds of their breakup were already there. So don't waste your time on people who violate a deal breaker. Just have enough in common with what you want to achieve in your life and where you want to go, that person can see themselves in that picture with you.
Okay. This is more from the internet again. There's a claim, and I would like to see if you agree with it or not. They say that ladies make rules for beta males and break rules for alpha males. Is that correct?
In the women that I coach, not really. I can see there's a certain type of woman that would do that, who's not very self-aware. You know, if they're just playing games and they're reading the rules and all those things, and they're just kind of paying attention to what they should do to be successful rather than just trusting themselves and feeling good about themselves and being really clear about what they want and deserve. They don't have to play those games at all. They can just be comfortable. You know, some women identify as like, I feel like I'm the alpha, and I think another alpha would be great for me. Or another person will say, I need a beta in my life. But it shouldn't be like from a place of power. It should just be about maybe your lifestyle. You know, it's not like having power over the other person, but here's the person who feels a little bit more laid back and is fine with the other person taking lead. You know, that's a match rather than, you know, I feel like I want to control you and be lord over you, being the alpha. Does that make sense?
Yes. So it's an energy. So it's a choice of an energy. How is the energy in the relationship? Not how is the power distributed. Not how power is distributed.
Agreed. Agree with you.
Okay. Another one from the internet. Would you agree that men have to preserve meat? Meat is an abbreviation for money, energy, attention, and time.
I have never heard that, but that's really fascinating. I do like that, in the sense that what I'm getting from that is it's encouraging men to really show up as their best self and really their best, most committing self in a relationship. However, I do agree that studies show that men need to provide, but it doesn't have to be money. It depends on the relationship. It could be that the person they're dating has more money and doesn't need them to provide money, but needs them to provide, you know, some other type of emotional support. So I think it really depends on you. When you're dating, you should be really clear on what you provide and then what you want your partner to provide, and be very clear about that so that there's no misunderstandings. Because not every, like you were asking about men and women, but I don't think every woman wants a man to provide money. I think she wants other things. But it's individual.
Okay. Let's go on another internet buzzword or sentence or statement. Buzz statement, let's say. Would you agree that women date across and up their social status?
I think it depends on the woman. I think there are definitely women who will do that. I was asked to be on a dating app, to be a spokesperson for a dating app for sugar daddies. And that's an extreme, but there are women who are like, hey, if I can find a guy who'll do that, that's great. For me, the people that I work with, they are looking for someone. When I say support and elevate them, I don't mean elevate their status. I mean, help them be the best they can be, help lift them up. So like, for example, my husband and I, we've been together for 13 years. And who we were when we met and who we are now are completely different, in the sense that we're much more aligned with our life purpose, each of us. And we've done that for each other. We've supported and elevated each other up higher into our purposeful path. And that's what I mean. I don't mean status. Some people, that's very important to them. Again, like the power couples. You know, so a woman who wants to be in a power couple, she's going to look for a guy who's at a higher station. But most people I deal with, they really have a concept of partnership, of an equitable arrangement.
What are your experience with what works best? What are the best marriages made of? From power couples or equal arrangements?
Personally, I think something, I try not to use the word equal, because if we get caught up in 50-50, we're bound to be disappointed. I say equitable. So it's relatively equitable exchange of energy. Just to make sure I'm saying it correctly. I think the equitable tends to be a little bit easier because you both want the same things. You're both coming from a place of relative equitability. Sometimes when there is unequalness, if one of the partners feels less than, and then the other person feels like they're settling. Sometimes it can happen in when there's a power difference.
Okay, how would you define the line between I'll give you everything and you're high maintenance?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Where do you feel or think that is the line between I will give everything for you and your high maintenance? Where does investing in relationship pays off, and when does the one partner just stays in the relationship because of what they can get out?
Okay, I think I follow you now. Okay, well, I think it comes to expectations. When it's really important when we are with somebody right from the beginning to be honest about and clear about our expectations. One of the biggest pitfalls I see women make is they have a fantasy often that if he's a soulmate, he should automatically know what I want. He should know all these things, and he should just give those things to me without me having to ask for them. It's very important, if you don't want to be a high maintenance mate, to give the other mate who wants to provide for you, give them a clear expectation of what you're looking for so they can make the decision about whether they want to give that or not. So many times we tend to be emotional, take emotional hostages by not saying what we want and then getting angry that that person didn't provide it. So a high maintenance person to me is someone who takes a lot, doesn't communicate what they want. And so they're always disappointed, and you're always trying to try harder to please them. When somebody who is, I say, somebody who can receive on a higher level but isn't high maintenance is somebody who really appreciates what you specifically can provide, expresses that, makes you feel appreciated for that, and then provides back for you in return. It's not just about one person receiving and one person giving.
Okay. Great. We talked so much about relationship when it's already ongoing. Let's get back to the dating profiles. You said that your dating profile was extremely successful, and you got your husband from that. Could you tell us how to set up a dating profile that we don't come across as, I'll say, cocky and, not too much. However, that we are not just hiding stuff that might be important or that might be something that can make or break the deal. Where is this?
You have very good questions. And I will say that the most important tip is flying your freak flag. And have you heard this expression?
No.
So it started with Jimi Hendrix in the 1967. He wrote a song, If 6 Was 9. And he talks about, he was this funky guy. And he said all the white-collared conservatives going down the street would point their finger at me and judge me. And he says, but I'm going to fly my freak flag proudly. I'm just going to be who I am. And then Crosby, Stills, and Nash in 1970 had a song called Almost Cut My Hair. And they talked about, they didn't cut their hair because they felt like they wanted to fly their freak flag. They felt like they owed it to someone. And then the song in the Shrek musical was about flying your freak flag, never put it down. And freak flag doesn't have to be sexual kink. It can be, but it's really just about not hiding any part of yourself, being really authentic. And I know how scary that sounds because that is what we're taught not to do. But I will tell you from personal experience that when I was presenting myself as vanilla, when I was Rocky Road, I was attracting almost exclusively cubs looking for cougars. I really was astonished. And I asked these young men, what is it about me that's bringing you to my profile? And they said, well, you look really confident. You look really fun. You have more sexual experience. You probably don't want to marry me, and you probably don't want to have my baby. They would say things like that. And I said, I appreciate your honesty, but it made me realize, okay, I'm not really presenting myself with an abundance mindset. I think I'm so worried about being 300 pounds and being, over 40 and a little bit too much. I'm so concerned about my odds, my numbers, that I was kind of presenting a safer version of myself, So I said, I'm going to get brave, and I'm going to put a lot more in my profile. I'm going to put my deal breakers. I'm going to put my love languages. I'm going to put my values and what I'm looking for, but really paint a vivid picture. I'll explain how I did that. But one of the things that I did where I was flying my freak flag is I had noticed that when I would bring up that I loved going to drag shows, I love drag queens, there were a lot of men who were very uncomfortable with that. And so I decided I'm just going to put a picture of me with a bunch of 7-foot-tall drag queens and see how they react. Because in my heart, I really wanted someone who would go with them to me once in a while and not just tolerate it, but enjoy it. Mm-hmm. When I did that, plus some other authentic things, the very next day, not only did my husband wink at me, but there were several men who were suddenly my age, wanting the same things, who were like, I'll go to a drag show with you. I've got to meet you. You are really cool. And, it's so refreshing to read such an authentic profile. So do you want to know what the elements of an authentic profile are?
Yes, please. I've put 4 of them. Be yourself, love language, values, and deal breakers.
Yes.
Are there any more?
Yes. So what I would do is when you're talking about your values, what you're looking for, think of maybe 5 or 6 adjectives. Don't make it like 20. Don't make your profile War and Peace, but pick really reflect on what is really the most important qualities that you want to say about yourself and also about what you're looking for. Think of the adjectives that describe those, right? Mm-hmm. But then don't use the adjectives. Okay. There's nothing more boring than reading a profile. I'm pretty, I'm funny, I'm looking for a guy who's smart. What does that mean? It doesn't mean the same thing to me as it would to you. So what you want to do, I would recommend, is let's say you want to say you're funny. If I wanted to say I was funny, I might say I'm like the love child of, Rosie O'Donnell and Bill Burr, something like that, so that it's really clear. Okay, this woman's probably a little earthy. She's probably a little bawdy. She's probably, sarcastic. That's very different from, let's say, some guys call me the female Jim Carrey. It would be a very different type of energy, but they're both funny. They're all funny. So I would just say, describe, if you really feel like you're funny or you're looking for someone who's funny, explain what that means. It could be my dream woman watches Stephen Colbert with me on the couch with popcorn every night or something like that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we should describe these adjectives, but not using them. So the
in other words,
the key.
In other words, instead of using the adjective, in journalism, we say show, don't tell. So instead of telling the adjective funny, say my dream person is, loves comedians like blank, blank, and blank. Or like I said, I'm the love child of, and then name 2 comedians, something so that you're painting a picture of what that adjective looks like. So the person can go, oh, I don't like that kind of sarcastic humor. Or they'll be like, oh, I love that. Don't be afraid to be really authentic about that. It's all about getting comfortable with scaring some people away, not getting stuck in the numbers game and scarcity thinking, because at the end of the day, you just have to find one person that's a really good fit that works for you.
Okay. A lot of business people that I talk to are, and also people that are in let's say, position of power and similar that would like to date, have big problem. They are basically ashamed to present themselves on a dating app, and they often use nicknames and stuff like that. I don't do that. I just put my name on, and so they can Google me and see what I'm doing. And it's I think that supports me. However, most of the people have problem with that, and they don't use their name. They don't use their picture. They make it so they're afraid of getting out. How do you feel about it?
They're afraid of what?
Getting out and explaining. So
being visible. I see. Yeah. Okay. I would recommend. So I think it's okay if you use your own picture to use a code name instead of your first name.
Okay.
As long as it's your picture and everything about you. The only reason I say it's okay to do that is just to protect in case, because there are some people on those dating apps that are scammers. So you do want to protect your identity to a reasonable extent. You don't want to be giving your phone number right away or an email address that could identify you. But your pictures should absolutely be real, and they should be not less than 3 years old. I had a guy who gave me, when I was dating, he had a picture of himself that was 20 years old, but he had cleverly photoshopped it in such a way as it didn't look like an old photo. And I didn't know what he was thinking, because then I show up to the date and he could have been like my grandfather. And I was like, did he think that wasn't going to be upsetting to me? That I was going to be so bowled over, that I would overlook that deep dishonesty and also lack of confidence. I would say if you're afraid to use your real picture, ask yourself, what is the reason why? Is it really to protect your identity, or do you really feel deep down you're not good enough or attractive enough? The more that you can really figure out why you're doing that, you can deal with it. I had a client who, very successful businessman, 58 years old, gay man, who really had this belief that, oh, I'm 58, so no, in the gay community, that's like death. Nobody wants you at that age. And I said, I think if you can start to get comfortable with your age and start to really appreciate yourself and all that you offer, you'll find that you'll have different types of men coming to you than they did before. 3 months after we finished working together, he not only attracted his lifelong partner, that person was a lot younger, who just happened to be an old soul, and said, I just love everything about you. And he's like, I remember telling you it wasn't possible, but it really is, that you can. It's just really all about how you feel about yourself. And I know that can sound so corny to some, but it changes everything.
Okay. Another popular belief that is transmitted over the YouTube often is that girls do not build the winners. They just wait at the finish line and pick the winners. What do you think about this, and how to choose partner, regardless if it's a girl or a man or whatever, how to choose a partner that will help you become or stay winner? What would be your advice?
I think that's a really good question, because I do think there's a lot of cynical information out there. I think there are men and women who are, for lack of a better term, gold diggers, looking for people who can lift them up financially, status wise. Those are relatively easy to spot. If those are people who are asking primarily about what do you do? What kind of car do you drive? What kind of house do you have? And they're asking questions related to status. That is a red flag. That is not someone who is standing in their own power, that's going to stand in their power beside you and support you. You're going to be dragging them along. They're going to be riding your coattails. The person who is asking questions about your background, what made you choose this field? Why do you love this field? And they're asking questions that show a genuine interest in who you are as a person and not the status that you bring them. That's the one to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
And not to get so caught up in whether or not you feel instant physical excitement around them, because studies show that if it's really the right person, you won't feel excited. You'll feel more comfortable. The Buddhists believe this as well. Like you'll feel more like you don't have to suck in your stomach or fuss with your hair or make sure your makeup is perfect. You will feel like you can be authentic with this person. And when you can let yourself go, the sex can really be amazing, but people just get worried, overly worried. How excited do I feel in this first meeting? And I would just advise, don't put too much in that, because you might make a wrong choice.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We touched a lot of issues and popular beliefs and similar. Is there anything else you would like our listeners to take from this interview? Any quick tips or trade secrets you can share with us?
I would say really get clear before you put yourself out there on what it is that really you must have in a relationship to be happy. The qualities that you must have in another person or in a relationship for you to feel safe, seen, supported. It's really, really important to also to understand your boundaries and to honor those when you're sorting through people online. You know, again, a lot of times one of the reasons I like online dating is it gives you that little bit of space so that when you're going through profiles, you can be a little more objective about physical chemistry than you would when you're in that person's space. So, you know, try to be more discerning and really own your boundaries and what you deserve. You know, don't overlook those just because you feel connected to somebody, because at the end of the day, in the long term, that's going to waste your time.
Okay. Thank you very much. I will put the links where listeners can reach you in the description below. I will also put the link to your book. Thank you, Jeanne, for all these beautiful insights and for being my guest tonight.
Thank you, Peter. I really enjoyed it. You have amazing questions. You're a really good interviewer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Faleskini, for this outstanding podcast. And thank you for listening to the Ask Faleskini podcast until the end. Mr. Faleskini would love to hear your feedback in the comments. And don't forget, if you want to know, ask Faleskini or listen to the Ask Faleskini podcast. In order to please the almighty algorithm, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.